The Jacksonville Jaguars never cease to amaze me. This is truly a roller coaster ride of a season, and after that dramatic and nail-biting loss to one of the worst teams in the league in the Arizona Cardinals on the road, the only question I have now is which Jaguars team are we going to get next? Now, the Titans are probably the worst team in the NFL, and all signs point to the Jaguars going 8-4. でも正直、俺は悩んでるよ。ジャガーズだから。始めようか。All right, welcome back to Jags Japan, where we talk all things Jacksonville Jaguars, all things Japan, anything in between, and I'm just a guy. It's the Week 13 preview show. We're going to go through all of it today, recapping and deep diving that ridiculous win against the Cardinals, my usual Trevor Lawrence rant of the week, and we got a good one today. We're going to take a look at the AFC South and go around the AFC playoff picture, and of course we're going to break down this big matchup against the Tennessee Titans this week and give my honest score prediction. But let's first just deep dive into that Jaguars win. And let's be real, guys, it wasn't pretty. It wasn't what we were hoping for, a relaxing, easy win on a Sunday afternoon, but it's the NFL. This isn't college football. In college, when you have, Alabama versus North Southwest Fresno State of the University of Southern Mississippi, you can relax and have an easy win, put your feet up, because it's almost impossible for teams like that to win against the big dogs in college football. But in the NFL, as they say, it's always any given Sunday. And even the Saints can beat the Rams, or the Titans can beat the Broncos if the ball bounces their way a few times, or if they just end up playing better that day. It can happen. Everyone gets paid. There's a salary cap. There's parity for a reason. So I think it's wrong for us to maybe go into a game expecting the Jaguars to kind of like put a double-digit stomping on any team. That game last week against the Chargers was awesome, and it was a lot of fun. But that's just not going to happen on a regular basis. I'm sure we all know that. I don't think I need to kind of go on a rant there on that. But yeah, they barely beat the Cardinals out west. They're 3-7, now they're 3-8. But I don't think anyone's going to care when it's all said and done and they just see the record. It's a tough road game in the NFL. Jags came out on top, which they usually don't. It's kind of cool because I feel like the Jags this year are just like a real NFL team. And what I mean by that is I feel like usually the Jaguars are kind of, they've always been like kind of a bottom feeder for a while, but just in the really weird ways or just very fluky things happening. In this year, besides I think the loss to Houston, which really should never have happened, there hasn't been like maybe those super fluky things that has happened over like the last few years. For example, in 2022, the Jags started 3-7 and then won 5 of 6 to make the playoffs. That usually doesn't happen in a normal NFL season in any normal NFL team. In 2023, the Jaguars started off 8-3 and then lost 5 of 6 to miss the playoffs. That also usually doesn't happen. If a team is 8-3, they're like a 99% chance they're going to make the playoffs, but that didn't happen. In 2024, the Jaguars went 2-8 in one-score games and tied an NFL record for most one-score losses in a season. That does not happen, and neither does, I think, last year with the Chiefs. The Chiefs went 11-0 in one-score games. That usually doesn't happen. This year, the Jaguars are 5-3 in one-score games, a much more typical record for a decent NFL team. They've also been blown out and dominated by good opponents like the Seahawks and Rams, and they've also blown out and dominated teams such as the Chargers and the Panthers. So say what you will about this team and regime, but I think they've really made true on their promise of kind of raising that floor. I think before the Jags can get to being a top of the NFL team, or a consistent winner like the Packers or the Steelers or the Chiefs or the Bills or something like that, before they can get there, they need to make that step up just to be an average, normal NFL team. And this year, I think they are. Besides that weird fluky game to the Texans where they were up 29-10, besides that, I think this has kind of been what other fan bases go throughout the year, and we're just not used to that. Other fan bases are used to their team pulling out ugly wins on the road, maybe not playing their best against lower competition, or maybe playing above their best against teams that they shouldn't be. That's just kind of normal, and I feel like the Jags have always been just kind of weird. They'll get blown out by teams a lot, but then they'll randomly beat the Ravens on Sunday Night Football or something. I remember that growing up. So getting this team just to an average baseline, getting this team to just be a normal NFL team is a big step in the right direction. And it's at a point now where this season, in my mind, the absolute floor, I think the worst case scenario this season is for the Jaguars to go 9-8. And I think the high point of this team this year could be 12-5, 11-6. I don't think they're going to run off 6 games in a row and be what would they be at that point? 13-4. That's not happening in my opinion. But I think the absolute best that they could do with the schedule going forward would be 12 wins. The absolute worst that they could do with the schedule going forward is 9 wins. And that's just how the NFL is, and that's kind of normal for an NFL team. And the thing is that you could argue and say that this team is kind of like that 2023 team. Some clunky, ugly wins, a lot of turnovers early on in the year, but then injuries pile up, and then here comes the collapse. I think an argument could be made that you could say that could happen given kind of the clunkiness of this offense and kind of the flukiness of some of the turnovers early on that I think stole some games maybe they shouldn't have won to like the Chiefs or to the 49ers. But I think the difference between this team and 2023, one is that their bounce back potential is incredible. I think even when things go very, very wrong, I feel like instead of, as they said in 2023, that everyone was kind of looking around trying to see if anyone else was going to make a play. Players are stepping up and saying, no, I'm going to make a play. Parker Washington is going to get a big punt return. Bashal Tutin's going to get a good kick return. Trevor's not going to let that interception get into his head. He's going to come right back and keep ripping it. So I think that's one reason. And then the next reason is that in 2023, the Jags had a brutal late season schedule. I remember they were playing after that Bengals game where they lost, they had the Browns who were surging with Joe Flacco and were playing the best of their time. They had the Ravens on Sunday Night Football, who was one of the best teams in the league that year. And then they had the Bucks, who were also surging really well that year. That's when Baker Mayfield was really cooking. So those were like 3 brutal games where they didn't look good. This year, they don't have any teams like that. The hardest teams on their schedule, they got the Colts twice and the Broncos once away. But the other teams they have on their schedule are much easier. I mean, we got Titans twice and the Jets, and you could argue the Colts at home, even though it's the Colts and they're good, they never win in Jacksonville. So the schedule works favorably so that unless something catastrophic doesn't happen, that the Jaguars, like I said, the floor should be 9-8, 10-7 at the absolute worst. And I think 10 wins could get you in the playoffs this year. If you have 10 wins and a pretty good conference record and pretty good tiebreakers, I think you can get in. So that's kind of more of a big picture assessment of what that win means for the Jaguars and my thoughts on them. But let's get through this game. I do want to start out with the negatives first, even though they did win. I usually start out with the positives, but I think in a game like this, for some reason, the negatives come out more. I don't know why, if it's because it looks like the Jaguars should have lost that game, but I think there was a pretty good reason that it was that close. I think a big part of it was a little bit of Gannon, Arizona Cardinals head coach, and his defensive coordinator, kind of exposing a little bit of our third down blitz pickups and our offensive line woes. You know, I think Trevor obviously isn't the best quarterback in the league when under pressure. In fact, he's probably one of the worst. If you blitz him enough times, he's probably going to make a bad decision like a sack fumble or an interception, and the Cardinals knew that, and it's exactly what happened. I did like that Cohen in the offense did adjust later in the drive to kind of put some drives together, but it was kind of concerning in the first half, and the offensive line in general just didn't do as good as I thought they would running the ball or, you know, pass protecting, especially on third downs. They were bringing those safeties and corners on blitzes around the edge a lot in that game, like Buda Baker and I don't remember their names, but the corners for the Cardinals off the edge, and kind of exposed a little bit of maybe our tackles and tight ends not knowing which one to pass off, and allowed a lot of big pressure, and Trevor could definitely hold on to the ball at times and be a little indecisive. So that was a little bit concerning. I hope that maybe the Cardinals exposing that gets them back in the drawing board and make sure that this doesn't happen again against Tennessee. But I was also expecting a lot more from the run game. The Cardinals did do, I think, everything to shut down the run game and put it in Trevor's hands to mess the game up. And it really worked for the most part. After that opening drive, there really wasn't much going on in the run game besides Trevor using his legs until really near the end of the game. And they really sold out to stop the run. And you give Trevor Lawrence enough times to wreck the game, he's going to do it. He's going to make those boneheaded plays eventually. It was just unfortunate that this game he made 3 or 4 boneheaded plays where usually maybe he only does 1 or 2. But that worked. And I guarantee that the game plan going into Tennessee for the Titans this week is going to be similar. So the Jags need to figure out maybe new ways to kind of pound the rock. I think against the Chargers, they did a great job of kind of like mixing up their game plan to expose something that the Chargers were doing on that split zone. And I think if they can stay consistent with pounding the rock, finding new ways to open up the run game, I think Liam Cohen is really a master at kind of run game scheme. And I think if they can unlock more ways to run the ball, that would work. But if not, if teams are really keying in, doing everything they can to stop the run, they're going to have to unlock more of Trevor Lawrence in the passing game with the weapons they have. I wonder if it's going to get to the point, I don't know if you guys remember, but in 2017, the boxes that Leonard Fournette had to deal with, the tackle boxes, I mean, where they had 7, 8 guys sometimes at the line of scrimmage. I mean, they had no faith that Blake Bortles was going to beat them in the passing game, and they showed it. But later on the year, Blake actually put in some really good performances because teams were stacking the box so much to stop Fournette in his rookie year that they left our wide receivers on islands and just gave Trevor some really easy reads, and he picked them up and actually had his best games of his career late in that 2017 season. I don't know if teams will take it that far because I think teams know, and I think all of us know, that Trevor Lawrence is a lot more talented and a lot better of a quarterback than Blake Bortles was at the time. So I don't think it's going to go that far, but I think the more that teams sell out to stop the run and stop this Liam Cohen run game, I think more is going to be put on Trevor to kind of get this passing game going. And I think the passing game did actually have a pretty good day, but like I said, you give Trevor Lawrence enough dropbacks, something goes wrong a lot of the time, and it's getting a little Jameis Winston-like. I'm not going to say it's that far because he still made some really good throws in the game and really willed his team to victory, but it's just a little scary sometimes when Trevor Lawrence has to drop back. How much did he drop back? Yeah, drops back 30 times a game, which actually isn't even that much compared to the rest of the NFL. Anyways, onto the defensive side. I'm still really not sold on this kind of makeshift secondary we got in the back end. They made a few good plays, and some players have really stepped up, but I just don't know if I can really trust Braswell, Wingard. Buster Brown's been great, but he's not that great in man coverage. And if we're going up against teams that have real weapons, not this week, of course, because the Titans don't really have much weapons at all to speak of, but if we're going up against real teams, playoff teams that have a lot of weapons, they showed it good against the Chargers, but the Chargers also have a really bad offensive line. So if there's a team with a decent offensive line and decent weapons, I think they can really expose our secondary. Which also brings me to the play of Greg Newsome, who was officially benched during the game. This is a guy that we traded our best corner, Tyson Campbell, for, and it was supposed to be an upgrade given the system, but instead he's kind of been a liability in coverage almost every game where he's been hurt. So it's not like Tyson was the best corner for us this year either, but, I know for sure he wouldn't have been benched for Braswell, I'll tell you that. And, it's not a knock on Braswell. I think he's been playing fine, actually, and really filling in well for the role that he's been asked to play. But it's unacceptable for your cornerback one to be benched covering Michael Wilson and Dortch. So not a great move by Gladstone right now. Hopefully Campanile can kind of figure it out and maybe figure out a way to get him back on the field and be a decent player for us. But if not, I mean, we're going to be either asking Travis Hunter to play full-time corner next year, or we're going to be shelling out a lot of money or draft picks for a decent corner to come in next year and play opposite, because it's not looking good. And I don't know if they're going to re-sign Buster Brown or anything like that. Jerrion Jones has turned into a pretty decent player, but the secondary this year, at least, with the guys that they have and the guys that aren't playing as well, I'm not sold, and it's kind of be a little bit of I remember as George Pickens in 2023 said for the Steelers against the Jags, it's kind of a hope defense. And this defense, I think, is a lot more of a hope defense than 2023's defense was, that's for sure. But one more thing I also alluded to in the post-game show, but I wholeheartedly disagree with the call to go for it on 4th and 1 late in that game. I understand the method. Get the first down, run out the clock, end the game on your terms, as Liam Cohen said. I totally get that. But the alternative, if it does go wrong, is exactly what happened. We're lucky that a repeat of the Bengals game didn't happen right before our eyes, as that's exactly what happened. It was 4th and 4, I think. Um, we can do a pass play. Thomas drops the ball, and then, they got to go 95 yards to just get a field goal, and the Bengals do it, and they actually end up getting a touchdown to win the game. We were really close of that happening again, and we're lucky that a repeat of that didn't happen. We almost gave up a touchdown there for the Cardinals win, and it's a completely different mindset for the offense if they got to go all the way down and get a touchdown to win, or they only got to get a few first downs for a field goal to tie. I get the idea of wanting to end it on your terms, but like I said, if you kick the ball, go up by 6, there's a lot more things that can go right for you than if you go for it on 4th and 1, you miss it, you give all the momentum to the other team back, and now they have the chance to go and get either into overtime or win the game. I think the game would have been over if they went up by 6 there. I don't think the Cardinals would have gone down and scored a touchdown to win, but so many things can happen. But at least credit the Jags for not breaking there, still staying even and keel to win the game in overtime. So, can't be too negative on it when we still win. Which leads me to the positives, which I do want to start out talking about special teams, because I think they actually low-key may have kind of won us this game in a lot of ways. We had a huge kickoff return by Bashal Tutin, an amazing Parker Washington punt return setting our offense up, Cam Little being automatic and clutch, and Logan Cook pinning them back when he's got the opportunity to. Coverage team getting great coverage on the kickoffs to pin them back and back them up behind the 30-yard line on almost every single kickoff. That's great stuff by special teams, and I think a huge improvement across the board compared to earlier in this year. I thought the defense played pretty well too. I thought the defensive line was really whooping on the Cardinals' offensive line early on and all throughout the game. I thought Josh Hines Allen had a ton of pressures in the game, was affecting Brissett and allowing others to get home. I loved the timely blitzes that Campanile called, and I loved how the defense stepped up to play complementary football. When the offense wasn't good enough, when Trevor Lawrence threw a pick, more times than not, the defense was right there to get a 3 and out or, get a big stop. And I think that game could have easily gotten out of hand when you think about that we lost the turnover margin by 4, and we didn't even get a turnover ourselves. We gave the ball to them 4 times in the game and a touchdown, and it was still a 1-score game the entire way. Usually, if you lose the game by, or usually if you lose the turnover battle by 4, you usually lose the game by 2 to 3 touchdowns. So the fact that they were even in a position to, stay in that game and win it is a huge hats off to the defense. But now the offense was kind of responsible for why this game was too close, because of the turnovers, and we'll get to the quarterback in a minute. But I really love the resilience that they showed to come back drive after drive, answering back. Parker Washington, Brenton Strange, Jacoby Myers are as reliable as they come right now. And when the season started, or the first half of the season, you had so many questions on who can you trust on this offense besides Travis Etienne. And these 3 guys have kind of carved out a role in the passing game to where Trevor really has a few safety blankets to throw to right now, and I think that's really awesome. And I think Trevor, he throws some dumb picks, but I thought he was really clutch in those final drives to get us the win, made some really awesome throws. And the first half was dreadful for the offense, really outside of the opening drive. It was good to see the offensive line, like I said, step up, be able to pick up those blitz pickups in the second half. Trevor standing in the pocket a few times, making some really good throws, and also scrambling a little bit with his legs. That was also good. The running game wasn't really working well outside of Etienne making a few good runs and just kind of sticking to it. So the passing game really needed to step up, and it actually did for once. So good for them. They've stepped up a few times this year when the running game wasn't working. Specifically, I remember Kansas City and I think maybe Kansas City in this game is the only ones I can think of right now. But, credit to the whole team. Somehow, I think winning a game on the road while losing the turnover battle by 4, like I said, is actually insane. Huge culture win. Great to see that the team and the QB that, they can play kind of bad and still somehow pull it out. That's incredible. I've been asking for that for a while from the Jags. I see other teams, other organizations that they don't have their best game. They maybe have their B- or even their C+ game, and they still end up somehow winning in the end. But that brings me to the quarterback, and it's time for the Trevor Lawrence Rant of the Week, which is a segment I'm convinced will never end while Trevor's the quarterback here in Jacksonville. And the Trevor Lawrence experience was on full display in this game. I think it's just truly incredible that Trevor Lawrence can continue to feed both sides of this argument. Feels like forever. He just throws gasoline on the fire of an already ugly civil war in this fan base. You got the Trevor haters and you got the Trevor defenders, right? And I think they both have solid arguments to defend their cases in almost every single game. And in so many ways, that game was a microcosm of the Trevor Lawrence conversation right now. The Trevor Lawrence haters have plenty of fuel this week to go on their rants. From him holding the ball too long and not having enough pocket presence on a few plays, and obviously staring down receivers, throwing stupid interceptions either in the end zone or backed up in your own way, being baited over the middle by a linebacker I've never heard of, putting the ball in harm's way again and giving Buda Baker the opportunity to make that play on the ball. Either way, the only reason the game was that close was the turnovers by Lawrence, and 3 of them you could argue were his fault. Now, the Trevor defenders, on the other hand, also have a ton of fuel to state their case why Trevor actually played a really good game. From the touchdown to Myers, which they were giving a 0 blitz, and Trevor still picked it up and threw a dart to Myers for the touchdown, for his 5th game-winning drive this year, for the resilience that he shows after a bad interception to come right back and kind of will the offense to winning that game, from the Parker Washington throw in overtime to the Parker Washington TD throw in the 4th quarter. There's a lot of times Trevor Lawrence stepped up, made good throws, and like I said, led the team to victory. And you could say it was almost like the Chargers playoff game back in 2022, whereas he threw the 4 picks in the first half and then came back through 4 touchdowns in the second half. There was a ton of dichotomy in this game. And it's all there to say that Trevor had a really good game, and it's all there to say that Trevor Lawrence had a really bad game. It just depends which side you're on and which way you want to look at it. I choose to try to be in the middle and kind of understand that both arguments are real, both arguments can be made. Trevor Lawrence maybe isn't great, he isn't terrible. I think he's in the middle. And for me personally, it's hard to say that Trevor had a good game, considering that he had 3 crucial turnovers that turned the tide of the game. However, you can't argue that he's also responsible of digging the team out of that mess that he created and winning the game on his arm and leading the offense on some huge scoring drives. So in my mind, I'm just glad that Trevor found a way to win the game, even though he still has, those dumb mistakes. He still willed us to victory, and I think that says a lot. Throughout his tenure year as the Jags starting quarterback, I think he's developed a lot and has been a lot more clutch than I think we realize at times, especially this year. So the way I see it, if he just kind of keeps us in the game and then in the 4th quarter can just make a few good plays and turns it on and be clutch, and if he can figure out to limit a few mistakes every game, I think he can seriously be a top 10, top 12 quarterback in this league. But I also don't think he never will be that if he doesn't limit those mistakes. If he just stays the course, and continues this Trevor Lawrence experience, as we all say, and has the good and the bad, I think he'll always just kind of be like average, top 20, maybe top 15 quarterback. He'll win some games for you. He'll lose some games for you, Jameis Winston style. But hey, this game, he made some dumb plays, but he also won you the game. So where do we stand? I don't know. It's a roller coaster, but at least he won. Winning cures all things. And, big picture, I think this was a huge culture win for the organization. Just as much as I think that Houston loss was devastating for the franchise, I think the way that they've kind of battled back, won big against the Chargers at home, and now the Cardinals away, I think that's huge. But not only did they win that game, they also got some help on Sunday, so that's going to lead me to the AFC South next. We're going to go through all of them really quick and then go through the AFC playoff picture before we get into this Titans game. So the Colts lost to the Chiefs in overtime in a crazy game. Chiefs came back and won after being down 20-6 at one point. And we're kind of finally seeing a little bit of the cracks on the Colts. And though that was a really tough road game for them, I still somehow thought that the Colts would kind of pull through, as they have a lot this year. But it's clear to see that if you can survive their early leads, then I think you can beat them. Because what the Colts do almost every single game that I've seen is that they get up in the first quarter, they have just some elite game planning by Steichen and Lou Anarumo, their defensive coordinator, to where their first 15 or their first 2 or 3 drives are almost perfection. They jump on you on a 14-point lead in the first quarter almost every game, and then they kind of come back in. So first quarter, the game was already 14-3 for the Chiefs. But the Chiefs kind of battled back in. The defense held them a few times, and they kept getting field goals, just chipping away, and then they were in it at the end. So the Colts know how to put pressure on a team early. So I think when they play the Jags, I think the Jags have to figure out a way. How do we stop that offense from getting opening drive touchdowns? They want to take the ball first. They always take the ball first and get a touchdown in the opening drive. But if you can survive that and make it a game in the fourth quarter, you have a really good chance of winning, I think. And also if you can stop Jonathan Taylor, which the Chiefs did. But of course, he's the number one back in the league for a reason, and that's easier said than done. But anyways, they dropped 8-3, and if the Jaguars take care of business this week, that December 7th game could mean the division later on in the year, but we'll see. The Texans also found a way to beat the Bills at home, and I don't know if it feels like the Texans are scarier than the Colts right now, but that defense is insane. And I don't care who's playing quarterback for them, and I don't care who's playing quarterback against them. I don't think there's an offense alive right now that can consistently be efficient against that defense. I mean, you look at their stats, they've made every big-time starting quarterback in the NFL look pretty pedestrian. Even guys like Stafford or like Josh Allen, like we saw. They're still 6-5. They're on the outside of looking in at the playoffs. They're nipping at the heels of that 7th and 6th seed. Would I be surprised if they're in the mix all the way to the end? Not at all with that defense. And if Stroud comes back and can play to Davis Mills level, I think they can be scary for sure. But if the Jaguars take care of business, the Texans shouldn't be a problem. All right, that's all it is. Meanwhile, the Titans lost the Seahawks. They actually battled pretty admirably, as they have a lot this season, surprisingly. But that game got away from them, and they sit at 1-10. And the Jags are currently 7-4 in the 6th seed of the playoffs, with a good opportunity to get the 5th seed possibly, and maybe even fight for the division. It really all hinges on if they can handle kind of their 3 easy games on their schedule, maybe steal a game from the Broncos or the Colts away, who knows. They are the 6th seed because there's a 3-way tie right now with the Chargers, Jags, and Bills, even though the Jags have the tiebreaker over the Chargers, who are the 5th seed right now, because it's a 3-way tie and because the Chargers have the best conference record out of the 3. That's why they're number 5 right now. So if the Jaguars were to tie the Chargers conference record-wise, then that tiebreaker would come into play and they get that 5th seed. But they've played more conference games in general. So if the Jaguars take care of their AFC games, then I think they could easily be maybe the 5th seed or possibly even win the division. But either way, I'm ecstatic how the season's going and that the Jags are even in this position. I think there's still a lot of football to be played, and we all know how things can come crashing down in a hurry, and it starts this week. But if they can manage the injuries, get a little healthier, and keep improving as a team, even if we miss out on the division race, going from number 5 pick in the NFL draft to possibly making the playoffs and having a winning record in 1 year, and without Travis Hunter for most of the year, is a huge step up. So let's get into this game now. Let's get into that next week mentality, one game at a time, as they say, against the Titans. But all Jags fans know the Titans, especially in Nashville. It's never an easy game, usually. Now, last year, the Jaguars did sweep them because the Titans were the worst team in the NFL. This year is much of the same. They are pretty bad, and the Jaguars should be expected to sweep them again this year. But as we learned last year, or as we learned last game, there's no easy game in the NFL, and especially on the road against a divisional opponent. The Titans, even without a head coach, a rookie quarterback who is not doing well, not that great in his rookie campaign, and a bunch of injuries, not a lot of talent to begin with, this game still scares me because Jaguars. But let's get to some of the injury news first. The Jaguars are still banged up a little bit. The hope is to get some of these guys back, like BTJ, Jordan Lewis, Anton Harrison, Trayvon Walker. Either way, we probably won't know anything this week until probably Friday or Sunday morning at times, because this regime is extremely tight-lipped about injuries. But honestly, if it's the same team, the same starters that were out there in the Cardinals, the Jags should still win by a lot, in my opinion. On the Titans side, they do have a myriad of injuries as well, especially on offense with Io Manor, Calvin Ridley, both likely out, so that's 2 of their top weapons. And then on defense, they're a little bit beat up in the back end at corner and safety. So pretty even injury-wise. If the Jags are down all those guys, like I did mention earlier, but it shouldn't matter. it shouldn't matter in my opinion. So let's break down this matchup. Let's start first with the Jags offense versus the Titans defense. This defense is not very highly ranked, but I think it's still underrated in a lot of ways. They do give up a lot of yards and a lot of plays and a lot of points, but I think they are hurt by having one of the worst offenses in the league. They're on the field a ton because their offense can't sustain drives, and that ends up breaking into big plays a lot this year, just like last week. The defense held Sam Darnold pretty well until they just couldn't anymore, and you saw Jackson Smith and Jigba just running down the field multiple times in that game. But it all starts up front with big number 98, Jeffrey Simmons. He's public enemy number 1, game record number 1 for the Jags, and the offensive game plan starts and stops with blocking and containing him and limiting his defensive impact on the game, in my opinion. Besides him, Devondre Sweat is a pretty big name on the defensive line, and Arden Key is someone off the edge that can make plays. It's clear that the strength of the entire Titans team is the D-line, and I'd say that defensive line is actually pretty good by NFL standards, not just for the Titans. And that's what kind of scares me about this game, is because usually when the Jaguars' offensive line has to go up against any good defensive line in the NFL, it usually has a tough time. When you think about the Texans, the Seahawks, the Rams, and even the Chiefs, those are the games this year that have really, the offensive line has struggled a lot, and a lot of it is because that our offensive line, I think, plays pretty good in games in which the opposing defensive line is just average or mediocre or bad, like the Chargers game or like the Raiders or like the Panthers earlier in the year. But when they go up against those elite defensive lines or those defensive lines that have really good players, they struggle a lot sometimes. So that can be kind of something that scares me. But I think the secondary is where things can be picked on a lot. And as much as I hate to say it, I think this game is where the passing game needs to have a big day. The key to this game is going to have to be through the air. I think Trevor's going to have to be on his game. I think the quick passing game is going to have to supplement the run game a lot. I think he's going to have to limit a lot of those mistakes. Pick on these corners any way you can. Let Brenton Strange eat over the middle and on those play action boots like we saw in that game against the Cardinals. I don't think running the ball is going to be easy this game, and I think, we already know that teams are kind of keying in to stop the run early and kind of force Trevor to throw it and make those mistakes. So if we can play into that in a good way, get big plays from the passing game, take advantage of those loaded run defenses, and kind of get big plays from the passing game, I think we can have a good shot of pulling away from this team early. I think I would take a look at what the Seahawks did and just try to copy that. Yeah, we don't have a quarterback playing as well as Sam Darnold right now, and we don't have a wide receiver that's playing as well as JSN. That was how they kind of made their money last game, was deep shots, passing game. A few pretty good runs by, what's his name, Walker? I forgot. A few good runs by the running backs, but mostly through the air. I still expect us to try to get the run game going. As I always say, I think getting Etienne and Tootin 30 carries in total is always a good formula for success. If they can dominate some time of possession, get some good plays in the passing game, but then also supplement that run game, I think the offense should have a big day on this defense. Should, as we all know. But moving on to the defense versus the Titans offense, I think this is where the Jaguars can actually win the game big, though. I think the Titans have consistently been one of the worst offenses in the league this year, and nothing about the Titans offense should scare anyone. Nothing except, in my opinion, two guys, Tajay Spears and Cam Ward. Now, those aren't big names right now in the NFL. It's not like they're having crazy seasons, but I'm scared of Spears because of how bad he made the Jags look in 2023. And in that game, with everything on the line, he ran through the entire defense multiple times for big plays. Now, was some of that because the Jaguars decided not to play defense that day? Maybe. And do I think he's really that good of a player? No, but he does have kind of that game-breaking ability that we can see give defenses some problems. And then Cam Ward, because though he's not really had that great of a rookie campaign by any stretch of the imagination, he still shows some really incredible flashes if you watch him. He kind of reminds me a lot of Trevor in his first year, just without all of the turnovers, if that makes sense. He doesn't turn the ball over near as much. If anything, he might remind me more of like CJ Stroud, but just on a really bad team, and maybe improvises even more than CJ Stroud did. I think their offensive line really isn't that bad when you think about it. It's really just Cam Ward kind of holds the ball too long. Sometimes he'll take some awful sacks at times. So, they really need to kind of be sticky in coverage in the back end and really take advantage of Cam Ward kind of thinking too much and holding onto the ball. But he will make some jaw-dropping plays with his arm, and I expect a few in this game as well. I encourage you, if you haven't, just watch back that Seahawks-Titans game. There's a lot of plays where the play breaks down. He's still in the pocket dancing around, and he just somehow flips it to a tight end who's leaked out the back for a big gain. That happens a lot in Titans games, and usually it doesn't matter because the other team is already up by like 20 points, but he can make a few pretty amazing plays with his arm. So the difference will be if the defense can just contain it so that if it does happen, it's not a game-winning play, because some of those are probably going to happen. And as I said before, he kind of reminds me a little bit about C.J. Stroud. And I remember saying earlier this season, I think I actually had the Jags losing this game because I predicted this would be like his breakout game. This would be his C.J. Stroud against the Jags in 2023 at home game. That's my number one hope in going into this game, that this is not the Cam Ward breakout game. If they do anything in this game, just win the game and make sure he doesn't go off, because that would suck as Jags fans to, one, lose that game, but then also be like, crap, another good quarterback in the AFC South. Here we go again. But, hey, if the defense, if our secondary can just try to stay glued to these receivers, limit Cam Ward's improv skills and just kind of make him overthink, make him make a rookie mistake, I think they can definitely win this game and really kind of limit them on offense. Titans can't run the ball, and they don't really have any weapons that should scare the defense. So just take care of business. There's no reason that this game shouldn't be a game the defense gets at least 2 turnovers and a dominant victory. But I will not be surprised if for some reason the curses come out and the defense ends up looking silly. Moving on to X factors on offense, I'm going to go with Brenton Strange. I think having him back last week was a huge breath of fresh air for this offense. And it feels like Trevor really has a true safety blanket again. And not only safety blanket, but I think the way he runs in the open field is pretty impressive too when he gets the ball in space. And these Titans linebackers and safeties don't scare me at all. So I could see this being a big game by Strange in the passing game. Defensively, I'm going to go with Foye Oluokun. I think he's had a really good year, and week in and week out, just flying around and being a solid player, making some plays, getting some tackles for loss. Of course, we know he has all the tackles, but making those big, game-changing plays are something that he's made a few times this year. I think he's going to be key in kind of disrupting Cam Ward, maybe using him on some disguises, maybe some well-timed blitzes, maybe dropping out into coverage, covering the tight end. I think he's a beast in the run game, and I think we're going to need him to be pretty good in the pass game as well to make sure that offense doesn't have a big day. But it's time for the score prediction here. I do 100% believe that this is another trap game for the Jaguars, and they cannot afford to be looking too far in the future to that December 7th matchup against the Colts at home. If you don't take care of business and you don't win a divisional game here, that game next week is going to become a must-win game, and you still might not be in line for the division if you lose this game and the Colts win. You might still be a game back out, and you're going to have to really make up some ground. This is one of those games you got to win. It's on your schedule. It's a gimme game. The Titans are bad. They got nothing to play for. You got to win this game. Cam Ward's improbability scares me a lot against our defense, and I think if the Jags can't run the ball efficiently, then the offense can really struggle, as we've seen. But I'm going to hinge my prediction on the fact that they almost allowed a letdown last week against the Cardinals, and I'm hoping that the team kind of learns from that and doesn't let that happen again. I think they're going to be aware of the situation. I think they're going to be aware of the stakes of this game. Play loose, rip it, as Liam Cohen says, and just simply take care of business. Jaguars win 24-13. I think this game is a big test to see if the Jags can kind of handle a game against an inferior opponent in the division, and they shouldn't be a threat. I think the Titans are scary because they have nothing to lose, but they are just not a good team. But it's still the NFL, like we always say, any given Sunday. The 32nd team could beat the number 1 team in the league. You got to come to play every single game. You got to have your expectations that it's going to be a dogfight. Can the Jags bring it, get up for this game, and actually impose their will on an inferior opponent on the road? Or are they just going to keep making dumb mistakes and allow the Titans to keep it close? Even if it does become a close game, I think I expect the Jags to still find a way to win like they did last week. But as long as Trevor doesn't do anything stupid, limit the dumb Trevor plays to maybe 1 or 2 instead of 3 and 4 like last game. I think the Jaguars should handle this game pretty easily and get to 8 and 4. Will it surprise me if the Jaguars blow this game? Not one bit. This team is so weird. You never know what you're going to get in the NFL, and especially with the Jaguars. So I think the only expectation is to have no expectation and just try to enjoy the roller coaster. Remember that in the NFL, almost all games come down to the end. They always come down to the fourth quarter, and big leads really don't matter anymore. As we saw in the Texans, you're up by 3 scores, that can go away in a snap. So, just hope they can keep the game close and that they can make the plays that they need to make in the fourth quarter to win the game. So that's all they have to do. The Jaguars have shown that they can do that a few more times than they haven't, so that's good. And I think getting to 8 and 4 for this franchise, such a huge accomplishment this year. I had them getting to 8 wins in total for the season this year. That was my prediction. I thought that would have been a huge improvement just to get to 8 wins. But to have them to be almost a lock for 9 or 10 wins and possibly the playoffs, I don't think you can take that lightly, and I don't think you can discount the improvement that they've made on this team this year. So, but let's not get it too ahead of ourselves. Please, Jags, destroy the Titans, because they have no business winning this game. They have no business making it a close game, in my opinion. I just hope that players that are still on this team from 2023, like Trevor and Josh, remember what happened at the end of that game, and they still take it personally and stomp them. So, for all Jags fans out there, let's say it all together: F the Titans. But let me know what you think is going to happen. Let me know what your thoughts on the Jags this year, what happened last week, what's going to happen next week. As always, stay tuned for more Jags Japan content. Thanks a lot for 200 subscribers. Been such a blessing to do this. I'm so thankful for all the support you guys have shown me. Please continue to enjoy the content, and stay tuned for that post-game show after the game. And I'm excited to see what happens. Go Jags, and I'll see you later.